Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the second panel. No need to introduce myself again. Today's topic, or this afternoon's topic, is Peace and Cooperation in the East Med, a Gateway to Prosperity. Another stellar panel lined up for us. Georgiades is the former Finance Minister of Cyprus, to my left, and current member of the House of Reps. Erdi Öztürk, Reader in Politics and International Relations at London Metropolitan University. Evan Kalpadakis from the Alexis Tsipras Institute for Peace, and Nicolas Kyriakides from the Cyprus Forum. I thought today we would begin with, obviously, the huge news over the last few months, which was Syria, and what feels like a rare glimmer of optimism, but has also provoked so much trepidation from Europe and all the other leaders wondering how to deal with HTS. So, Erdi, if we can begin with you, how do you assess the way that the response so far has been in regards to HTS? We'll get to Turkey's response to HTS separately.
Yeah, I mean, to scrutinize what's happened in Syria, I think we need to scrutinize one particular term which is quite important for the current international relations: connectivity. I mean, it has been like more than 13 years, right? The Assad regime is, oppression, it was so brutal. And all of a sudden, after August, what happened? Most of the international audience had learned a new organization, HTS, and a new leader, and because of the connectivity. Because if the Russia wasn't that busy with Ukraine, after what happened after 2023, what happened in the Middle East, Iran is a kind of a drinking sip right now. So therefore, the transformation within the dynamics, both in Europe, in the Middle East, and the transformation in the United States has popped up a situation which is called the New Syria. In these circumstances, as an academic in the UK, who's been Turkish originated, it is so difficult for me to be optimistic or pessimistic because it is too early to say many different things. The first one is that Turkey, Russia, Iran, United States, Israel, lots of external actors have different kind of desires for Syria. Some of their desires are overlapping, some of them are in cooperation. This is the first thing. The second thing is that currently Syria is a very poor country, not only in terms of financially, but at the same time in terms of institutions. And you can bring money, you can change the regimes, but developing an institution is not something very easy that you can create with AI or with a memory stick. You can't upload the capacities of the institutions. You can't develop a functioning institutions that easily. And who's gonna teach, who's gonna guide, who's gonna or work together with Syria right now? This is the big questions, because go back to square one, lots of external powers has different kind of desires. So this is the big question mark for me when we think about that, whether do we need to be an optimistic or pessimistic regarding Syria. I think it is very early to say anything at this point. Let me stop on here and then I think we could continue.
Wonderful. Harris, the view from Cyprus on what's unfolding in Syria and particularly Turkey's role there.
Latika, let me start by saying this. The Middle East has been failing. Over the last years, it has been failing. Syria, Lebanon, Libya further to the west, Yemen further down on the south. It has been failing. It has been collapsing. And before this situation, Europe, we are part of Europe, has been absent. It has been complacent. It has been mentioned, we are, as the European Union, we are significant foreign aid providers. That's not enough. First of all, in some extreme cases, it can go badly wrong because it was also our money, the European money, which has been financing Hamas. So everything relates to what was mentioned in previous panels, that the European Union is such an ineffective foreign policy and security actor. By the way, parenthesis, if we are going to play it tough against Trump's US, we'd better have some muscle on us and ensure that our 2 feet are not on separate boats. Otherwise, this will end in disaster. But this has been a crucial dimension of what has been happening in the region. The European complacency, the distancing from this region. The US has been distancing itself from the region also, but it is a region that, as we have seen, it comes back with a vengeance, and sometimes with tragic results. It is a region which matters. Energy routes, maritime routes, and energy sources even, both hydrocarbons and renewables, very large populations which can lead to extreme migration flows down to hardcore security, from terrorism to nuclear security. So it's a very important region, and we have allowed it to drift without engaging effectively. Well, you have mentioned the role of Turkey. I think in the absence of an effective presence, involvement by Europe and the West in general, other regional actors are trying to fill the gap. I am not sure if this is done, on what basis this is done, if it will indeed lead to a more stable, safe region, which is what we hope. And I mean, yes, it has been a wake-up call the last 2 months. Ukraine was supposed to be a wake-up call. George Pagoulatos mentioned earlier that the Draghi report was a wake-up call. Maybe it's time that we wake up.
Okay, Evan, I wonder what you see are the opportunities, because we have a ceasefire that for now looks to be holding with Israel-Gaza. We do, notwithstanding the distance and absence of the US and the EU in Syria and the Middle East broadly, have a fresh opportunity in Syria. How are you seeing the opportunities take shape?
Well, I think we're at the beginning. It's clear, but it's not fast enough. I think there was a very interesting discussion before about the economy in Europe, the challenge that we have ahead of us, and the Draghi report, the Letta report. I think we need some Draghi or Letta report on foreign policy and the international role of the EU and what it's going to do. And I think the strategic compass from 2 years ago is completely not enough to deal with what's happened in the last 2 years. Is it enough? Everything has changed in the last 2 years. It's changing in Ukraine, and we have to deal with a completely new situation than it was in 2022. We had a war in 2023 that changed the Middle East, and we have a Trump election that is reshaping transatlantic relations for the first time after 80 years. Are we seriously going to move ahead with a strategic compass from 2022? We need new tools, and we need a new way of thinking where we accept that the decisions that are made in Washington about its role internationally are a challenge to us, but also an opportunity. Just the way it is in the economy, it's on foreign policy. It's an opportunity for us to build a role. We don't have it yet, and the minister is right. We don't have the muscle yet or the tools to build a role that is more assertive in the region. We don't, it's clear, and I think we should be frank about it, we don't have the leadership either. After the German elections, we need to have a serious discussion about European leadership in the region, and a rethinking about our roles. And just to put 2 points on
do you see that as at a member state level as opposed to the Commission, or do you mean both?
I think it's on all levels. And in terms of member states, I mean, there are two countries in the Eastern Mediterranean, two member states in the Eastern Mediterranean, Greece and the Republic of Cyprus. They have had in the past a very central role in moving things ahead and in the foreign policy activity of the European Union in the region. They have had Greece has had an even more central role in the Balkans in terms of moving ahead and strengthening the role of the EU. I think there are tools that could be part of this new architecture that the EU should be thinking about. As the Commissioner mentioned before, there is a new tool. It's not strong enough. It's the new pact for the Mediterranean. It's based more on lower level policy, but it's very important. We have also a strong regional tool, I think, not strong enough, but it could be the Med9, the European southern states that are working together. Those are countries that are all very engaged in the Mediterranean, in the future of the Mediterranean. And we have to start building slowly what we think the architecture should be, knowing that we will not and cannot depend on Washington to define this, and that we have diverging not only interests but also values in terms of the region. And that includes peace in Palestine. We cannot accept, I believe, the proposal of President Trump about the Palestinians, that it goes beyond European positions and European decisions.
Do you mean he's called to clean out Gaza?
Exactly. And we cannot accept a fully transactional policy. Of course, we have to be transactional too, on several issues. That includes Libya and Syria. We cannot accept an architecture that is only based on U.S. interests, and we have to define what our interests are and promote them. One last idea, and we can talk about this more. We need a broader discussion on the EU-Turkey relationship, and that has to do also with its role in the region. Part of this discussion has to do with pressure on respecting international law in the region and encouraging others to do the same, including Syria and Libya. Part of it has to do with incorporating Turkey in the architecture that we want to see.
Okay, lots to follow up on there, but before, and I want to come back to Erdi on some of those things on Turkey, but Nicolas, we heard on the previous panel the National Security Advisor talking about the trilateral, for example, arrangements that he felt were some positive signs in the region. What do you see from the business perspective about some of these paths for cooperation, and are they making any meaningful progress?
Well, first of all, I should make clear that I'm speaking from a more civil society / business perspective, not from a political perspective. But I think that's important as well because, Cyprus is a good example to, a case study to discuss whether, you can find, ways to collaborate between two conflicting parties and whether the business world or the society can help solve political problems. And what I see is that we haven't, it's not clear in our minds yet that, first of all, we want peace and we don't want war. I mean, we're ready to go to war, and it's even fine for us to go to war, and it shouldn't be. I mean, and we see that, if we let things progress as they have in Ukraine and in Gaza, then it's very, very, very difficult to go back. So my suggestion is from a civic society perspective, we should support and make all we can to keep the dialogue open, because if you have the dialogue open, then it's much more difficult to have war. I think also, trilateral agreements are important, but Turkey is key in the East Med, and maybe Erdi can tell us later on if Turkey is serious about, Greece-Turkey friendship, and therefore maybe a solution to to the Cyprus problem. All in all, I think our countries, and I'm talking about EU member states, should be ready to face aggression, but they should do whatever they can to avoid any further conflicts.
And have you seen this attitude change on the ground in Cyprus since the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East? Have you seen Cypriots think that war is closer to them, or the other, that war must be deterred now at more cost than perhaps they might have been previously willing to accept?
I mean, normally we should have seen this, but I don't think that people understand how easy it is for frozen conflict to become, a real conflict.
Erdi, what does a meaningful, productive, progressive EU-Turkey relationship look like in this context?
Well, I don't know how many years that we're going to talk about the Turkey-EU relations, and we need to progress, we need to develop, so on and so forth. This is an ongoing process, and most probably I'll be retired when, and then this process will continue. The first thing is that, I'm so happy to hear that, that sentences from you, my colleagues. Turkey and the EU needs to reframe, redesign their relations. But in here, for both sides, as an academic, not a diplomat, I can criticize the both sides. Actually, I think it's a part of my job. The key doctrine, the key word of the relations between Turkey and the EU has been always a pragmatism. But it shouldn't be, because what we can understand right now, Turkey, both as a society, both its modernization, institutionalization, so on and so forth, is not only a Middle Eastern country, but also very much a European country as well. This is the first thing. The second thing is that, considering the Russian invasion to Ukraine, grain deals, what happened in Gaza, what happened in Syria, what is going in the East Mediterranean, you talked about Libya, so on and so forth. Turkey, despite of everything, geostrategically, it is a very important country, not only for EU, but also EU-related countries as well, including the Southeast Europe, so on and so forth. So in these circumstances, both sides should give up their pragmatic point of views and think about logical partnership. I'm not talking about the EU, the Turkey's, being a member to the EU. I'm that realistic to see that this is not very possible. But at the same time, I see that the cooperation between these two big and historical structures is not only beneficial for Turkey, but also beneficial for the EU. We've been criticizing EU's current situation a lot, which is very true, but at the same time, you mentioned about, my colleagues mentioned about, EU should find a way or to play a role in the Syria or reshaping the Middle East. Is there a gap? Very, very fundamental Aristotelian concept. Nature hates gaps. So in these circumstances, you need to find a gap, or you need to find a permanent, logical, local, but at the same time an international partner. I think there is one, namely Turkey.
Harris, would you like to offer some thoughts on those views?
Well, sure, I definitely agree that Turkey is extremely significant geopolitically, and it would have been an excellent prospect if Turkey became a credible, reliable partner. We would stand to benefit more than anyone else if Turkey became a credible partner, but I'm not sure if we're heading in this direction. I want to see movement in this direction, but I am not sure. And this relates also to what I was referring before, the credibility and effectiveness of European foreign policy, including EU-Turkey relations. Because, let me give you an example. Can we rely on Turkey as a credible, reliable partner if it does not recognize that we exist, not only politically but on the map? Libya, there is this Turkey-Libya the memorandum. Yeah, it's as if Crete and roads do not exist. Now there is talk of a Turkey-Syria
EEZ, yeah.
EEZ delimitation. Nothing wrong about that in principle if it is based on international law and maritime law. There is a procedural issue that the current authorities in Syria are interim, not fully legitimate interim, but the more substantial point, will it be based on international law, or will it, again, as in the case of Crete, omit the presence of another state? So, yes, I'm all in favor of a mutually beneficial relationship with Turkey, both as members of the European Union, but also for the stability and progress of the region. But it takes two to tango.
Mm-hmm. One relationship that the EU does seem to be all in on, Evan, is Jordan. And we saw the King here yesterday. They signed this €3 billion partnership. Is that the obvious way for the EU into the Middle East to try and secure and shore up that stability we're all hoping for?
I think in general the pacts for the Mediterranean that the Commissioner referred to before are definitely useful, but they can't replace the need for a strategic compass and a strategic direction and a regional policy that would include what we actually want to do. Of course, the EU can give money and be a provider of aid in different directions and ask for returns in the refugee issue. We've discussed this and and create more people-to-people contact, and that's very important. But is it enough if it doesn't have a general strategic direction about what it wants to do in the region? And I think rightly, also to echo what the Minister has said, we need to have the basic components of what we need to do in the region. One basic component is peace. Do we have a role in peace in the region? We do not. Actually, this role has been left to actors that might be pushing it forward in a more adventurous way. The first person that spoke about peace in Ukraine is the Prime Minister of Hungary. Is that what we want? Do we not want to speak about peace on the basis of international law or on the basis of mutually agreed policies? I think that just to continue on the discussion on the EU-Turkey relationship, as the Minister has said, we have seen actions from Turkey in the last years on the basis of the Blue Homeland concept having to do with the crisis of Oruç, but also the Turkish-Libya memorandum that was signed that go against this logic. On the contrary, we have an architecture that has been built by Greece that can be very useful in the last years based on a different logic, and I think that could be important in the components of how to build our regional policy. Number one, the Prespa agreement. A possibility for two countries that have a difference for 27 years to come to a mutually acceptable agreement that contributes to peace with the support of the EU and with the strengthening of the role of the EU. Number 2 and 3, the agreements of Greece with Italy and with Libya on the EZ maritime zone. Egypt, sorry. The proof that it is possible to agree on the basis of international law on maritime zones in our region. Number 4, I mentioned the Med-9, now Med-7, now Med-9 regional agreement, which shows that there is a space for more regional cooperation. We have the components to build an architecture step by step. The pacts, the new pacts for the Mediterranean are a component of this, but we need to know what we are doing, and that will help our relationship also with Turkey to make it clear where our red lines are, what we will not accept in our EU-Turkey relations, and how we can cooperate and encourage Turkey to work as a credible partner in the region. For example, a very, very central question to go back to the table on the basis of UN Security Council resolutions on discussions on a Cyprus settlement, which would be key for the regional role of the EU, if the EU could play an active and facilitating role in this. But as we saw, despite, efforts also from Cyprus, this was not very possible lately. Can it be possible in a new architecture where Turkey has different challenges that it's dealing with, and could have a possible strengthening of its role if it sat on the table again and restarted talks on the basis of international law and UN Security Council resolutions on the Cyprus issue? So I think maybe we have an opportunity ahead of us, not tomorrow, but in the next few years, to rethink of the architecture and to see what our priorities are. As long as we don't know them, pacts and agreements with Jordan and Tunisia and Egypt are positive, but they won't be enough.
You seem a little bit cynical about those pacts. So am I right in reading that you think they're more about migration and border control?
Migration is a positive example that is a good start. I think the most positive period in EU-Turkey relations was before the coup attempt of 2016, between 2015 and 16, where with an active role of Greece then and Germany, there was a strategic relationship that was slowly being built, including an EU-Turkey statement. So the migration could be a good basis to start cooperation. What I'm saying is it's not enough. And it's not enough also because of the way that the other Mediterranean countries, non-EU Mediterranean countries, will look at us. If the only thing we care about is to return refugees, return illegal migrants to them and, absorb their best minds.
Nicolas, how likely or realistic do you think some of what Evan was talking about there is in terms of trying to resolve the Cyprus issue without perhaps an administration in the United States that really cares about resolving this in the first place? Do you think it's up to the EU? Can it be done? Or is it ultimately something that you'll need a bigger power to help resolve?
I mean, you asked me yesterday at the dinner who is the most crucial factor to solve the Cyprus problem. I was trying to think whether it's the United States, the EU, Greece, Turkey. I think nobody alone can do it. There has been, momentum at different points. Also, the US were really, interested at some point. Also, the EU occasionally. For example, 2004, we had the Annan Plan, and, the stars were aligned, let's say, but Greek Cypriots said no, maybe rightly so, because we felt that the plan was unfair. I think we shouldn't only say that the EU should do this and should do that. The EU is already doing quite a lot of things. For example, in Cyprus, you have the Cyprus Settlement Unit, which belongs to the European Commission, working with the Turkish Cypriots so that it helps them improve their economic situation and, come closer to the communiqué acquis. But that's not enough, I think. And I think it should be, a collective effort on behalf of the US, the EU. Of course, we don't know what the Trump administration will handle, how it will handle this, or whether it will bother at all.
If it will even factor.
Yes, indeed. Since it's not up to one factor, I want to repeat what I said earlier, that, what we should do is we should do the best we can on a diplomatic level to come closer and at least don't leave the table and, find, ways to collaborate on different levels. And maybe at some point, then all the stars will really align.
Can I jump in?
Yes, Evan, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt. Just two experiences from the previous Trump administration. One experience was the Crans-Montana talks in 2017, during the Trump administration. The Trump administration had not really taken up and was not so organized yet by the time the big conference took place, and was definitely not engaged with the Eastern Mediterranean. And I think that was a factor that did not help in finding a solution. That made a solution much more difficult. A second example during the Trump administration, the PRESPA agreement. By 2018, the Trump administration had been much more organized and had settled important positions. It was engaged, it was interested in the region, and it did support the finding of the PRESPA agreement. I think definitely that U.S. is crucial in playing a role in finding solutions, and I think that what is necessary, though, is for us to create the momentum and see where we can reach. What the U.S. will not do with Trump or anyone else anymore will be to try to create the momentum itself. But we need to try to create the momentum ourselves and find where it could go. For example, right now, there doesn't seem to be a potential for the restart of the Cyprus talks, but there definitely has to be a potential for the creation of what Tsipras calls linkages between the two communities, where we start talking about very practical issues. For example, the question of pollution in Cyprus, which is incredibly serious and has to be dealt with across the whole island. So I don't believe that right now the conditions exist, but we need to build momentum, and the EU has a crucial role to play in this, even more crucial now, the way the Trump administration is working.
How would you build momentum, Harris?
Okay, not without including Cyprus in a regional framework. I would emphasize a big picture approach. What was mentioned, I mean, cooperating on specific issues like pollution, no problem at all. They will not resolve anything. It's good. I mean, I'm not against, but nothing will be resolved by such measures. It's, I mean, to draw a parallel, it's like the focus of the EU on banning plastic straws when Russia is invading Ukraine. So the soft political agenda is always useful. I'm all in favor of it. It is not enough. So I'm advocating for, let's say, a more traditional, high political approach. U.S. engagement in the region is absolutely necessary, but we cannot. I don't want to say we cannot do anything about it, but it's not entirely in our hands to keep the U.S. involved. But we are in Brussels, we are in the European capital, so we should definitely work our utmost to ensure that the EU remains involved in the region, the broader region. It should focus on Lebanon. Okay, it's one of the cases more than Syria. Syria, I have no idea what will happen. Such are the uncertainties. There is a glimmer of hope when it comes to Lebanon with the new leadership and with Hezbollah's back broken. The EU should definitely back the stabilization of Lebanon. Within this framework, maybe the conditions we all spoke about which will enable a Greek-Turkish, let's say, reapproachment, within the framework of which Cyprus could also be revisited, may be the only prospect. But I do insist that we need to see both the prospects, but also the challenges and the dangers of having an unstable region for European security as a whole, and how resolving one problem at a time, Lebanon, the Palestinian issue, securing the stability of Egypt, Jordan, and of course Cyprus, Greek-Turkish relations can facilitate Western and European security.
And on that very constructive note, I think we're out of time, which means it's lunchtime. So thanks for bearing with us through these excellent two panels. Please thank the panel for their thoughts and contributions today.